I was booked for a wedding, and it was a gypsy wedding.
Oh, wow. Now, clarify that for these people.
Right. I guess, well, kind of more Irish tinkers than kind of Romany. More kind of like Irish gypsies rather than Eastern European gypsies.
Transients.
Right. They kind of...
live in trailers, mobile homes, or
right.
they
kind
caravans.
of like traveling people.
Right. Kind of like circus folks, but they're not in the circus.
Right. Yeah. They go around, we used to in Scotland, we called them tinkers because they generally would fix things like pots and pans, and they would fix, you know, they would sell scrap iron, and they would buy and sell, you know,
right.
scrap metals,
aluminum
that kind of
cans.
Thing. Yeah, that kind of thing. So, so it was a gypsy wedding. It was, I think the bride was maybe 16, the groom was about 50. It was the middle of a week. It was like Wednesday night, and they had asked me to start at 4 o'clock, and I wasn't booked to start until 7. And when I asked why we had to start at 4 o'clock, apparently the bride had the wedding dress from like Goodwill, or the equivalent of Goodwill. It didn't quite fit her, and so she wanted to get out of this tight dress as quick as she could. So she wanted to do like the first dance and then go get changed. So we do that. So we do this the first dance. She gets changed, comes back in what can only be described as a white leisure suit. You know? And she was a bigger girl, so this was not. We call them in Scotland. You know, anybody from Britain will know them as a shell suit. Over here, do you guys have shell suits? Mm. They were kind of nylon and you know, it was just Anyway, this was what she termed was bridal dress.
Pantsuit.
So anyway, so they go on, they have their dinner, and I then notice there's a guy setting up karaoke. I mean, I'm set up to go, and this guy comes in and starts setting up karaoke equipment. So we so what's going on? Oh, we're going to have some karaoke. They proceeded to have 3 hours of karaoke. So I get started eventually at 11 o'clock. And it's meant to finish at 1 o'clock, but I get started at 11 o'clock. And they said, oh, we want as our first song, we want Barbie Girl as the first song. Okay. So halfway through Barbie Girl, this almighty fight starts. Bar room, there's tables getting tipped up, there's chairs getting broken over people's backs, there's, you know, blood flowing, and next thing you know, all the cops arrive. I shut everything down. The groom white shirt is covered in blood. He's fighting with his bride, and until the time as soon as the cops started grabbing him, in which case the bride starts fighting the cops. That's my man, I love him, that's my man, you know, and he's been slapping her about 5 minutes previously. And we cleared the room, and the cops came back in about 5 minutes later, and they were just, the cops were killing themselves laughing. I said, what's so funny? He said, well, most of the people that we just took to the cells, we only let out this morning from the bachelor party last night. So yeah, it was an eventful day. And the time where I showed up to do a wedding, and the groom, an older gentleman, was getting carried out in a gurney because he'd had a heart attack.
Oh yeah, those are always nice.
So he
looked dies.
He was okay. I mean, he'd had a heart attack, but he was okay. He looked up from his gurney, kind of gave me a big thumbs up and said, you know, give him a good night, son, as they took him off to hospital. And we carried on. We had the reception. So.
Yeah. There are other stories, and the one I told you was probably a relatively tame one compared to some of the other stories I could probably tell. Believe it or not.
What's the funniest?
I've had quite a career.
What's the funniest or most inappropriate song you've ever been asked to play for a wedding?
The most inappropriate song I've been asked to play for a wedding. Let me think. It was recently. Oh, Ass and Titties.
Oh, right.
Ass, titties, ass, titties, titties, ass and titties. It's probably the most inappropriate song I've ever been asked to play.
Was it a stripper's wedding?
It was at a country club.
Last
summer.
Oh, okay.
And they loved it.
I had a bride and groom.
It's really something's disturbing about seeing grandma out there going ass, titties, ass and titties. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Because her ass.
Titties are
down
beating
there.
her ass. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I had a couple who wanted. They must have been big Top Gun fans because they wanted "You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling" by the Righteous Brothers as their first song, and I'm like, you've lost that lovin' feeling, you know?
Right.
Now it's gone. You know that's yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think probably the most inappropriate song they've ever asked me to play. They ask me to play all the time. It's for it's for the father-daughter dance, and it's "Brown Eyed Girl" by Van Morrison.
Right.
Now,
if
you've never listened to the lyrics of that song, it's about a grown man having affairs with a teenage girl and getting her pregnant. Behind the stadium. Behind the stadium. Yeah. Saw you just the other day, My How You Have Grown. That shit is just creepy. What is the craziest gig story you have? What's the craziest gig?
This one just pops right in my head. This was before I met Marsha. I took one of my buddies. I always took a buddy with me, I guess just for load-in and security reasons. I always worried about getting ripped off, you know, and so I always made sure we, you know, had somebody else. But it was a wedding. It was kind of a rough crowd, and all of a sudden the bridesmaids started fighting. Pretty soon they were taking it outside. And this is at one of these VFW places.
Oh, right.
On the south side.
South side's an interesting...
Yeah. Sirens are coming by. Pretty much there's only like 5 people in the room. It was me, my buddy, a couple ladies, and I had the music still playing. One of the ladies asked me to dance.
While the fight's going on.
While the fight's going on. Everyone's outside. I mean, you know, the guys are out there, groomsmen, everyone's out there, and I'm like, all right. I'm like, oh, what the heck, you know. I'm not dating anybody. I'm a single guy, and pretty soon she's getting a little frisky there.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that.
Right.
And she had been drinking too, pretty heavily, and she's like, "Yeah, well, I said, "Well, I don't, you know, I don't know if this is a good thing. I should probably get back to the booth." She goes, "Don't worry, my husband's outside in the fight." I'm like, "I think I'm going back to the booth." I was trying to be nice. I thought, was, you know, just mingling with the guests, trying to make them, you know,
right,
having a fun time, but
right.
It just got a little out of hand. But yeah, it wasn't just that part, but the brawl and the cops got called. And to make a long story short, this was the only time I thought I was going to not get paid. I don't know if you've ever not gotten paid for doing a wedding.
I've always gotten paid. I've never.
Well, I've always gotten paid too. And then we were breaking down, and I was watching. You know, you kind of watch the bride and groom, and you don't want to rush over to them and say, "Hey, give me my money," you know, but you want to kind of, you know, find an opportune time. They're usually talking to guests at the end and stuff like that. Well, pretty soon they disappear, and you know, we were loading our equipment, and I'm still keeping an eye on it, and I'm not finding them anymore. Now I'm starting to get a little nervous. So we get outside with the last piece of equipment, and now I see the bride and groom. They're pretty tanked up, and they're getting in this old jalopy, and all of a sudden my buddy runs down the street, and he's literally chasing the car, and they stopped, and he's like, "Oh, here," and he whipped out the cash and paid us.
Okay.
But I was like, yeah, that was kind of a unforgettable night, pretty wild. You know, how about you?
Oh, me. It was back when I was working Safe House, if you remember those days.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I had a group of women come in to the bar, and one in particular was, we'll just say, getting rather friendly with me, and we'll leave it at that. And then the next week I was DJing her wedding.
Well,